All right, so for those who are just joining, I'll go over the logistics. Again, you all are muted. If you did have something to ask our wonderful panelists here, go ahead and type that into the question and answer option. We'll probably reserve all questions until the end, and I'll go through them and I'll be monitoring those as they come in. Utilize the chat if you just want to chat amongst yourself or send Donnia or Michael or myself any kind of comments, but really the question and answers is where we'll track that. If we don't get time at the end to address all of the questions that you do have, we will respond to you at a later date. So we'll go ahead and we'll do a brief introduction and then we'll turn it over to Donnia and Michael. So I'm Emily Clark. I'm the Director of Architectural Services here at ATG. So thank you for attending today. These town hall presentations are always my favorite, especially to get the industry experts out there in here to share their knowledge. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Donnia and Michael. So it's my pleasure to have them. So I'm going to turn it over to them to do an introduction to themselves and jump right into the presentation.
Thanks, Emily. And thanks to ATG. One of the great things about ATG is stuff like Midwest University, which is where I met Donnia years back. And it's getting to work with her on stuff like this is really helps my practice in as much as it helps to remind us how we do different things and we're using the different tools in the same way. So I'm Michael Freiert. I'm the BIM manager at Pope Architects. We're about 80-person firm in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We do a variety of architectural practices, but just architecture. I've been in BIM management for a number of years, worked in Revit since really 6, and done a couple of stints as a BIM mercenary, sort of bouncing around doing lots of crazy stuff, which has been a lot of fun. And on the other screen there is my friend Donnia.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Afternoon, y'all. I'm Donnia Tabor-Hanson. I'm with Trimark USA Kitchen Group. I've been with them for about 6 years. I do have a previous background in architecture. So coming to kitchens was a bit of a shock when they do everything in inches and no feet. That hurt for a while. That I kept twitching. But I do enjoy what I do. And so, yes, I do a finite industry thing. I do think, though, that what Michael and I found that the things that I do can be used in architecture, MEP, and others, same as some of the things he does, because we're just doing things a little different, but a little crazy. And we really appreciate that all of you guys have taken some time out to spend some time with us. So, Michael, why don't you get us started here?
Thanks. Let me see if I can get my notes and Zoom both docked in a useful fashion here. So we're talking about schedule today. What we're talking about is not going to be the detailed, here's what you do here and all these little, things, not the basics of how filtering works in the schedules. Hopefully you all have a background in that, but there's also a lot of really good reference material for that. But we're going to talk about both that we use in very different ways so that you can see that even if our exact use is not applicable to your practice, that there probably is something you can do with that intent and that idea. We're not really going to talk about key schedules because that's a little bit more about just getting data around, and the basic idea of that is what it does. There's some advanced crazy stuff you can do there. Key scheduling. We are going to use a couple of key schedules. We're not really going to talk about note blocks because they're just another flavor of schedule. They're great for generic annotations. There's a lot of really powerful things you can do with that, but that's more about generic annotations. We're not really going to talk about import and export of data because we want to focus on what you can do within Revit and how that works. Anything you get into a schedule, you can totally export out of Revit, manipulate in Excel, manipulate in Google Sheets, and pull it back in. But that's an external to Revit workflow. We're really going to focus on that. And we're not really going to talk too much about graphical formatting for making schedules overly pretty, because that's going to vary for everybody. Some folks are going to love the zebra stripes in rows. Some folks are going to hate them. Somebody's QA department is going to say it has to be this font. That's all individual personal stuff. So one thing that Donnie and I both do almost the same is, if I can find my screen share button here. The generic share. There we go. The generic annotations that, the notations that appear everywhere, and abbreviations lists. These are both schedules, and we both use them as what do we call it, Donnie? Sort of dummy data.
Well, it's static.
It's static data, but we're using a data set that is not useful to us.
Yes.
Nurse call devices don't really get scheduled a whole lot, so you can hide a lot of data in that set if you don't need nurse call devices. Donnia, you use is it masses, right?
Yes.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I can show
Do
you.
you want to jump into that?
Okay. So yeah, let me jump in here and show you. Yeah, this is a whole page of schedules. And why am I doing text? This is a whole page of schedules. And people say, well, you can do text with numbers now. Yeah. So this is my text. I just want to try it in text. At least I can put numbers or letters in, and yes, you can change it out. And yeah, I can change it to numbers or letters. I can't do this. I can't do a combinations of numbers and letters stuff. And so, yeah, I'm using a key schedule. And if I get into this, I can see that I've gone and said the fields are a key name. And just to show you what I've got, my schedules, these are always in a project. So I have these as project parameters. And yes, I'm scheduling masses. It's something, a trick I used to do when in a previous life, I used to go and set up architectural firms and engineering firms. And I did this for their notes. And then this one has been around since before I started. And I was looking after talking with Michael, and I'm like, okay, so I need to see what this is. And I just looked at it and I'm like, well, it's scheduling topography. Well, I don't use a lot of topography in a kitchen, so why not? So this is why we use these type of schedules instead, these things for schedules instead of using notes and such, because you can break these up, move these around as you need to. And then we also have a nice little generic annotation with the title that we use for just sort of prettying up where our schedules are. So people say that, you don't want the big title on there, it didn't look right. Do your own title, do a generic annotation. So
now these are fixed static things
yes.
that once they're set up, they kind of sit there. You might have a couple of changes, once every 2 years you have to revise your abbreviations list.
Yes.
But those are just a vanilla schedule. Both of us, for our more complicated schedules, have let's say print schedules and working schedules.
Yes.
Do you want to jump into your working equipment schedule for a minute? 'Cause that's got some cool stuff there.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Your naming there, you use 1_working, whereas we use WK_. So your working schedule sorts to the beginning of your schedule views there, whereas ours sort to the end. And it's a different way to organize them, but it means that instead of having all of the print schedules intermixed with food service blah 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 working, if you put a key at the beginning of it or the end that you can sort by letter, you can pull all those schedules that are working out of the print schedules that you don't want your users to mess with.
Right. And in our working schedules, we have some things that are going to show up here for inclusion, like everything has to have this parameter turned on. And then we have our TM utilities, which is a parameter that we use to help color code, sort, and stuff. And I'll be talking a little bit more about the color coding later, but it helps sort things in and out of schedules. But this one working equipment and utility schedule has everything in it. So anything that's in here feeds into other schedules. It feeds into our electrical, our plumbing, our just our plain old utility schedule, or our equipment schedule. So they can go in here, and we like it up front because this is where we want you to go. First thing is right up here, go here, and it fixes all the others. And our print schedules are already on our sheet. So we use these. Oh, I also have these in, I do lowercase here, where if I go to the food service equipment and utility schedule, you see there's no lowercase in here and it's a lot cleaner look. So that's one of the things that we do with that. So Michael, how do you sort what?
As you say, we do the same thing. We have our working views in mixed case or camel case, and our print stuff in all caps. It's a really easy visual cue for the users. It's one thing to have a good naming convention that's shuffle stuff around, but if you can have additional reminders to make it clear where the user is, it makes it easier for them. It takes a little bit of learning, but once they've picked that up, they just really run with it. So where did my mouse is? My mouse is sticking to Zoom and I can't move it. This is fun. There we go.
So did you want to show your print and working?
Yeah. So on our, where is share screen?
And so all of these schedules that you already have set up, including the ones that you showed on kind of the cover sheet, those all exist in your standard template. So they're
Yes.
already ready to go for everyone. You're not pulling those from somewhere else. They're there in the template to start with.
Yep. So this is the cover sheet that exists in our template. You can see some generic notes there. They're instructions for the user to edit. This is our sheet index. It starts off on the sheet. Jumping into it, we've got some placeholder sheets that are practice type specific variations. So our the HO is for our housing team. They have some different scheduling stuff that they do, and different from some of our other teams, related to code specific stuff for them. So that's why you're seeing sort of multiple architectural and general things in this. But this is for print. There's a lot of hidden formatting that happens in here. Hidden field, there's a whole passel of parameters in there. The working sheet index has, just like Donnia had, all of that exposed. So that if you need to edit something, you can find it. Sheet index that's just for managing those little tick boxes of if the revision is included, a sheet is included in a particular issue and revision. So two working views, one that's everything, like this sheet isn't showing up, why not? I can see all the parameters that drive that. And another one that is just the, I need to turn these on so that when an issue is being released, the project manager can go through and be like, yep, all of these are here.
So you have a lot of the same information in both your print and your working schedules. It's just in your print, a lot of it can be turned off, but still used for sorting and filtering.
Right. So our let's see, get to the right schedule here. Our sheet group, if you look off on the side here in my browser organization, 01 general, 05 architectural, 03 is civil. It's going to sift in between there. If we probably don't have a linked Revit model from civil, but we've probably got some sheets added in there. So we're going to insert data rows for those dummy sheets. We can then modify the sheet group, which sorts which I'm pointing at my screen, which never helps, which sorts into the bigger organizational sets, the general, the architectural. Architectural here is not the 01. We've got a redundant sheet index discipline there. So the group sorts it into the big blocks. The discipline sorts it into the sub thing. So we may want to group mechanical into, say, mechanical and plumbing and break it out. But then we may also have something strange happening. A lot of a common issue we have is a mechanical consultant will have the, say, M100 be their general mechanical notes for all of their plumbing, fire protection, HVAC. All of those get stuck on one sheet. So M100 may go before M001 and M002, which may come after MP100. So in order to sort that, we've got a number column here that we can just use as an extra little thing. We don't need it for all of our projects, but where we need it, now those sheet group, sheet discipline, sheet sort order are all shared parameters. So that when we have an engineer who doesn't have that parameter, we can send them that. they can add it to their project. Worst case, we can add it to their project and add that data if we have to. Rather not do that, because as the project updates, we have to redo that, and it's easier for them to just do it once. But that's a shared parameter, whereas a lot of yours are project parameters.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, let me go back. I'll get the project parameters, which are used in some of my schedules in just a little bit. But let me go back and let me pick up on that coloring thing and continue on with formatting and some of the things that we use in formatting. Lots of colors here, lots of pretty colors, and all of our colors are based off of our TM utilities. So our TM utilities is a shared parameter that is used to help us sort things not only in our schedules, but also we have it so that we want to make it so that our team members are set up for success. And here is a working view of one of our kitchens. You see these colors in there. The pink is plumbing, the green is electrical, the cyan is no utilities, and if it's brown, it's got maybe plumbing and electrical. So that's a number 12 or 21. So we use these as 0 for nothing. 1 is plumbing, 2 is electrical, 3 is our HVAC mechanical, having to do with hoods mostly. So if it's got plumbing and electrical, we might have a 12 or 21. And this color coding carries through to our sheets here. The yellow has to do with, is it by others? So you might want to just double check some of your utilities there. Existing, you might want to double check your utilities. But when it comes to our families, if it's pink, there's something missing here or something red flagged. So do you really have a 0 in your direct waste size? Well, maybe it doesn't have direct waste. Maybe that parameter just needs to be pulled out of that family. It's a lot of times when they build families, they'll start with a generic model family or specialty equipment family, and it'll have all these parameters in there. Well, they don't think about removing the ones that they don't need. They just fill out the ones. Okay, I do the same thing. I fill out the ones I needed. I'm trying to start learning to take these out. But this also is good for down here. I know I've got an indirect waste size, but I don't have an indirect waste number. So these color codings is just a way of helping our team members check their schedules and their working schedules.
And those are all conditional formats, right, Donnie?
Yes, yes. So when I go in here and look at these schedules, I have actually started using some working view or some view templates on my schedules so that I can set things back to it if I need to. And it was easy to take one from the other, because if I took the utility one, I could go in and delete all the plumbing and now I've got an electrical one. Or go and delete the electrical and now I've got a plumbing one. So I was able to use that, and I just started using that recently. So when I go into the formatting, if I go in to see the indirect waste size, I have a conditional formatting that if indirect waste size equals 0, color it pink. So it's just a conditional formatting for those.
And we're going to get to this a little bit later, but I want to point out that that's in the schedule for the parameter, and that'll
Yes.
matter in a little bit. That the
Yes.
conditional format to change the color is there.
Yes, and it is in my working views, not in working schedules, not in my print. So we just put the color in here, and it's just a way to help bring the team member's eye to, here's a problem here. Is this really supposed to be a 0? Like, I found a CO2 tank that had all these parameters in it, and I'm like, it doesn't have utilities. So I just deleted all those, and guess what? It went all blank across through there. But it is just a way of checking up on things. Let's see, I'm going back to my notes. Yeah, and the project parameters, we remove the 0s. So if I go to my food service, I don't want to see all these 0s, because that will give us an RFI real quick going, what do you mean you've got a 0 on your filtered water size? Well, it doesn't have filtered water. Well, then why do you have a 0 in there? So that is moved in the fields. And this took this took some double timing work, because here I have hot water size. And if I go to formatting in here and find hot water size, it's a hidden field. Because I'm using HW size, and now I'm going to go back over here to the fields and find HW size, and HW quit, cancel. HW size, if I edit this parameter, you will see it's just got a formula to it. And it says if hot water size equals 0, use empty length, else use hot water. That's what the formula is reading. So if hot water is a 0, use empty length. Oh, where's empty length? You want to know? I hear that. Yes, way down here. I have several empty parameters. Now these empty parameters, I don't have any text one because I'm not working with text. I'm using length, and that works for the size of a hot water size. It also works for the height of the rough end. So I can reuse that parameter over and over and over. And these parameters, when I edit it, you can see it's a project parameter. The project parameter is used here because I don't have to add it to my share parameter file. I worry about that. It's in the project, and guess what? It's only used in schedules. Guess what? The schedules are in the project. So everything is maintained right inside there. And I can go and I just put it under other, and it just falls in there, and it's under length. And it is going to be assigned to the things that we use: electrical fixtures, generic models, plumbing fixtures, specialty equipment. But then
we're not using that, but we could totally assign anywhere we have places we wanted to do that. We could assign that to all of the parameters and use empty length for anything. You could have, if you need
yes.
A light fixture that has an empty length for some reason or other, you could
yes.
have that assigned to that, or a nurse call device or topography.
Or something in your door, as long as it's a length, as long as it's inches, feet and inches, yeah, you can use that. When it came to something specialty like the electrical, I actually had to go see what it was. See, wattage is what? Well, it is discipline is electrical, and the type of parameter was wattage. I had to go apples to apples with that. So I went into the ones that needed it for the watts, the volts, and the amps, and put those in there. So let's go back to the fields and find wattage. So I've got watts, and then I've got my watts and capital letters. Notice the capitalization. Anything that's all capitals is something I've put in there. And I can see that this is if watts is equals 0, then empty watts, else watts times, because we're putting kilowatts apparently in here. So using those formulas and using those project parameters, I'm able to clean up this. This does look a lot neater than this right here. There's a lot going on here and a lot of things that we don't need. And like I say, let's see, as soon as I get, if this was FS3, let me get back into it. FS, well, let's just pick it on, there it is. See, the color goes away. As soon as it gets a correct value, it clears up the color. So that's how setting them up for success and giving them these colors so that they can work with, so that it is a flashing thing. And it relates to the same colors that they're used to seeing in their print views. Then it makes it so that they're used to it all together. And then when they're ready to print, we have it just to go in here. And if I'm in FP overall, I go to FP overall and print, and just assign that print template to the project. So that's one way that we are doing a lot of conditional statements and some formatting to work with our schedules. And these type of things can be done in a lot of ways. You can red flag anything you want with a color, just put a conditional color and conditional statement in there for it. And that is something that I'm just introducing to our schedules. So I've got one person that I've been working on the chain restaurant schedule. She's really excited. For the others, if they want it and they see BIM managers come out with a new schedule, guess what? Go delete the old one out of your project, start a new project with a new template, take that and just insert from file, and you can bring those schedules in to your project. So everybody in my department can have all these color codings and stuff in any project that they're working on currently. And I do have this in various, I've got it in 18, 19, 20. So that's the problem with BIM managers nowadays. You got to keep up with, because we don't get to choose which version of Revit. Oh yeah, that's your job, Michael, the architects. So
we don't always get to choose right now. I've got a couple projects that are in the wrong version because they came with an existing file.
Yeah, we're the last ones invited to the dance, the kitchen. So yeah, we have to be prepared to deliver in whatever project version you have. So
We've actually got a very similar use of the conditional project there, or
Yes.
conditional parameters. Let's see here. So I mentioned the tick boxes for this sheet is issued with a sheet name. The issue name and number date 1 there is a conditional format that just comes from that is, if this parameter is checked or is yes, that display, it's quote X quote, that's a weird textual character. It's not an ASCII code, but it's something like that. And then if it's not checked, this parameter is displaying quote space quote. So these are showing a null value effectively by a space, and they're showing an X. So on the sheet index, we're seeing those little tick marks, and we're not really running with them. We use a little bit of conditional formatting for color. We use it in our master view list. This is when you're looking for a view and you're trying to figure out if everything's there. Sheet number shows up as green. If it's not on a sheet, it doesn't show up. It's a way to really clearly see, to highlight there's something missing there. Now, something that I'm interested in starting to dig into more, based on your use of conditional formatting and using the way we both use sort of a dummy parameter to drive data cleanup and to make it show up the way we want it to, is from shared parameters, which we use a lot more aggressively than you do. Hijack shared parameters to schedule some interesting that you don't necessarily expect to need to schedule. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? This is a really cool idea that I'm starting to torment our BIM team with.
You are? Okay. You'll have to stop sharing for me to share.
Yep. We practice this on Teams, and on Teams you can just steal sharing from each other, but on Zoom in presenter mode you have to actually give it up.
Okay, my hijack parameters. This all started when I was working. There was another BIM manager in charge of the Trimark share parameters, and I was working with a client that had a lot of unique requirements for schedules. And I was told, you don't touch the share parameter from Trimark, and that's still hopefully the rule today. So I just told her, I said one time, I said, how about if you give me some I can hijack? Just some parameters. She says, what do you need? Well, I need some text parameters and some length parameters. And I gave her a list. I said, give me like 4 of them, like text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4, length 1, length 2, text 3, length 4. Well, it got a little, it didn't take long. You know, I asked for 4. 6 months later, I'm like, just give me 10. Just give me 10. So our shared parameter file at that point, which was 4 or 5 years ago, had an edit again. And that's the last edit that it has had. But it is basically our XYZ parameters. I called them XYZ parameters. Why? Because it shows up at the bottom of the list. So I went in and had these added: 1 through 10 of area, 1 through 10 of integer, 1 through 10 of length, numbers, text, volume, and yes, no. And with these parameters, I can just about fix any schedule. I was working with one on shelving unit, and they wanted to find out the volume of the shelf. So I had to go from where the bottom shelf, the top of the bottom shelf, to 2 feet below the ceiling. So I had to include the ceiling. Well, that's another length. So I just that was length 1, and then length 2, maybe the distance. And I had to subtract each one of the shelves. Is it a 1-inch shelf or a 1.5 inch shelf, et cetera, et cetera. So I was hijacking these and putting these in schedules. Now, you want to really mess with somebody's mind,
so
don't tell them what it is.
So like I say, so what you're doing is taking other data and
Yes.
linking it to that shared parameter.
Yes.
And then displaying it in a different format and with a different thing.
Yeah, all I had to do is give it a different header, a different title in the formatting, but it allowed me to use those. And the worst thing you do is don't tell everybody what you're doing. So we have a place on,
Never document anything you do that is different from standards. If you're doing something different from standards, always hide it. Name it
yes,
exactly the same thing. Don't rename anything. I'm
no,
kidding. Please, if
he's
you change
kidding. Do
something
not,
that is, if you change normal behavior, write it down, because you will
yes,
forget, even if it's just you, when you look at the project 3 months from
yes.
now.
In the case where I was working with a large team. We actually had a OneNote that we had a whole list of, this is where all the hijack parameters were. Right now, when I'm working on some, if I'm working on some, like for this chain restaurant that I'm putting on, there's going to be some things that are unique, not only maybe hijack parameters, but also other things like make sure that you check this and that or the other, get this information for the whatever project notes. We have a place on our landing page. This is what our open and close page is. It is a title block. And this is where we put our project notes. So you would put your project hijack parameters here so that others know what has been done that's not standardized. So yeah, you do want to document. If you do these hijack parameters, you know, it's kind of like this. As a BIM manager, I know that I can give you a shared parameter file and somebody's going to break it. It's like, I've invited you into the sandbox. You're going to break my toys. Some people will throw the sand out and then invite the cats in. It's just if you give them the toys they can play with, they're more apt to not break it and not try to create their own. They need some of their own. I understand. Well, here's you something to play with.
Well, and those toys need to be accessible and
Yes.
easy enough for them to understand. So naming the shared parameters something that is useful, as opposed to just. I recently came across a line type that was such and such as line type. I'm like, that I know who. I'm like, I know the person who that's named for. I'm sure they didn't do it. I'm sure they said, hey, I need this line type, and some user is like, okay, fine, I'm putting in their line type.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do something, if you're going to give people those tools, which you need to, give them tools that are easy to use. Give them,
Yes.
so the working views that we're demoing are all set up so that they work well for what the users are doing.
Yeah.
Like what I, as a BIM manager, want to be the ideal behavior may not be what actually works well for the boots on the ground. So give them the tools that work well for them, and room to grow in those tools.
Yes. Yes. And right now I don't have any of those hijack parameters being used, and the current things. Now the group that I have been working with for that larger chain, that as far as I know, they're still using some of those hijack parameters, but I know others that have used them, and I just know it's there if they need it. Give them the tools. They're going to be smart enough to go get a shared parameter. You know, give them the ones that they need.
Well, and you can use those to potentially to combine multiple parameters. So if you've got 2 or 3 different parameters that are looking at different things, and you don't want to use to edit the families and rework those parameters, you can have a conditional statement that is, if let's say fixer parameter C, if parameter A exists, use parameter A's value. If parameter A doesn't exist, use parameter B's value. If parameter A and B don't exist, return some error code and then highlight it or red. So you can see what's happening, but you can get, as long as they're the same flavor of parameter, you can get things dialed in. And even if they're close, you can do some, if integer times 1 inch to get to a length if you have to.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've gotten a little bit off our script here. You had mentioned using view templates for views.
Yes.
And switching a little bit between your different types of working parameters there. We really only use, or working schedules there. We really only use view templating in schedules for resetting things to desired print behavior.
Really?
So
That sounds cool. Can you show me?
no, because I don't have in my template, I don't have someone who's done something wrong. We'll have everybody has this where someone copies something from a previous project. It worked well there, so I'm going to copy it over. Well, that project was based off of a project that was started 5 years ago when we used such and such a font. And that comes in, and all of those little display things are just a little bit different. Maybe it's a 5/64 font size instead of an 1/8 inch or whatever. Just reapply the working view or the print view base schedule template, and you can get there.
Yeah. And you can decide what you want to include. If you don't want to include all the formatting, never mind. You should always include all the formatting.
Yeah, you should.
Let's just not do that. And one of the nice things about this is if you fill it out in here and you've got these in here, you can go to view templates, manage view templates, and I can see that these things show up in here. So I can use transfer project standards to get my view templates from one project to another. I don't have to bring the schedule over. I can just bring the view template over, and that way I can just apply it as need be. So if I'm gonna go back and try yours idea. I need that formatting for the print ones because I've not thought about doing this. Like I said, I just started using it because here's all the things that were in there. It had all the categories and everything was formatted the way I needed it to be. And I just duplicated it and made, remove plumbing, I've got electrical and stuff. So I like the idea of having it where it locks down all your formatting as far as your lines and your types of font and everything with it. And that would be so easy to be able to bring it over because you can just do that with transfer project standards. Nice.
Yeah. And if worst case, if you've only got part of it that's messed up and part of it that's irregular, with the template you can apply just the little bit of it you want. I believe that works with view templates for oh no, come back.
Do you need me to stop sharing?
No, it's fine.
Oh.
So let's see, where are we at here? Speaking of view templates, yeah, if you do want to stop sharing for a second here, let me get back to Zoom and share screen. Revit share. So if you've got one schedule that's great, we all know hopefully that you can split a schedule up into multiple columns, which is how these general notes work. There's a whole passel of different columns there, and these are using a similar while I'm here, a similar hidden field formatting. Abbreviation letter there is a hidden field, so that the sort process there is the A's here sort the A's out, and they're called A, and that's what the group is. So if I make that hidden, the sorting grouping is using abbreviation letter as a header. On our title, though, let's say you've got a really big project. It is not at all unusual for us to have a really large project that has more sheets than will fit on one page. The way to fight that is to take your sheet index or whatever schedule you have, duplicate it. In our working sheet index, we don't need to change anything. We can just run where it is, keep going. But in our sheet index copy 1, we're going to turn off the title because we don't necessarily need it on the second page. We don't want to see that. And then in our there we go. In this view, we may want to filter it by greater than and then for schedule A, and for the page 2, we may want to filter it by, sorry, for schedule A, we want to filter by less than some value. So we may need to say, this would be where our sheet sort order comes in. We don't want parameter exists. We want say is less than, I'm just going to pick 5 here. And that's going to lose all of our architectural numbered sheets in our it's going to be called copy. We're still seeing all of them. So over here, we want to filter by sheet sort order is greater than or equal to 5. So that way, anything that is 5 is included in one side or the other. So that, if it's less than 5, it goes into the first sheet. If it's more than 5, it goes in the other. The reason we've got that, no, not the revision 1, the working sheet index. The reason we've got that as a number rather than an integer is if we need to add, this wants to be 4.9, or this wants to be, this one needs to be 5.1 to move it to the end. Then when we have a 5.2, we can add 5.12, 5.13. We can sort of add a little tiny bit of random number there. It doesn't show up anywhere other than in the sort order schedule to get it to show up in the right order. If that was an integer and I needed to renumber this to 3 and then added 2 more sheets to 4 and 5, well, now I'm in my 5s and that doesn't work. So I find it's very rare that you want a hidden parameter to be an integer as opposed to a number, because a number can always be a whole number. But it's rare that it needs to get a little bit more tidy. Let's see.
Okay, I've got something to show there. Let me go back to mine.
Yep.
When it comes to those, that's when my TM utilities helps. So I've been in the overall working equipment and utility, but when I go to my electrical schedule,
so
every one of the, go ahead.
I was gonna say, to talking about your TM utilities thing, these are another hidden parameter. Donnie is using them for the 0123 as a code for electrical, plumbing, etc.
Yes.
And they could be ABC, MEP.
Yes.
But by using them as text, you can get a whole lot of data hidden in there to use to filter in a lot of really aggressive ways, because this is you didn't mention what the TM utilities parameter was earlier. We've been skipping around in our script here, so it's I'm trying to track things. I'm like, I don't think you mentioned that one.
Yeah, the TM utilities is a text, and we have it where if it contains 2, it's going to be electrical. So it could be here. I've got one that's 23. I've got one that's 12. It could be 32 or 21 just as well, as long as it contains 2. So we use that contains to get in there. And if I come over here to my, since I'm using a template here, yes, my TM utilities, he has text, see, and he does, I generally put him under identity data. So if I get a family from somewhere else, goodness knows, my people don't always take families from our Hive library. They may get them from anywhere but Revit City, please. Sorry. But we have to put that TM utilities parameter on it. So I've even developed it's a whole different story, but I've got a dynamo that they can run that just adds the TM utilities to it. And then they just have to fill out the value, because they need to put that and a couple others, like make sure that the food service equipment identifier does come on a lot of families that are developed by other people as well, or found on other places. Yeah, we have a couple parameters that we do have to have added to families that come from outside of our company. But I'm trying to keep the library growing and building it weekly in there. So, but that helps. But yeah, then those parameters again are hidden in the print, but they're still used for the filtering and for sorting.
And we've really focused on like the sheet index and this working schedule, because we're doing a lot more complex things in those 2 particular schedules.
Yeah,
you can use all of these tricks for anything you schedule. We've got because our housing project doors get scheduled as unit specific doors versus in addition to our overall project doors, we've got a couple of door schedules. Those get sorted in a couple different ways. We've got our master view list. We've got master wall type schedule that lets us look through which wall types are actually present in the project, which is just a quick, easy cross check. We're starting to add a couple of schedules that are, I'm in the middle of a big template rebuild, and we're adding in some quality assurance and second set of eyes views and schedules. So that second set of eyes can see, hey, this data appears, that's prototypical appears, you should double check that it didn't need to get edited. We don't quite have all the quirks worked out of that yet, but the and most of those quirks are how QA wants to see that data and what makes it most accessible and usable to them. So just having the, hey, we can schedule, you know, this text doesn't or this object doesn't necessarily give it use to the end user. So finding out what the person actually wants to do with that data and how it's useful for them is really key. So having these cool schedules for, you know, a working door schedule is great. When you place a door on the project and you can't find it, look at the working door schedule. It shows up everywhere. What drives me nuts is when I'm trying to find a missing door. Someone's like, oh, why can't I find this? I just put it in the project. I can see it. And I'm like, why is it? Someone hid a couple of parameters in the working schedule because they didn't want to see them. Well, that makes it then hard to use that working schedule to troubleshoot. So that's another place where I've built a couple of not for schedules, but for views. I've built a couple of view templates that are turn everything on.
Yeah.
And our users never should be using that, but it's helpful for me for troubleshooting it. But schedules are so helpful for trying to find that one thing. You're like, okay, I want to schedule all of this in the project, and I can look through and see all of those parameter elements for, you know, which of these is the weird thing. I can see the phase, I can see all of the stuff that is
that's cool,
and see what's not behaving.
When you can go through and schedule everything that, you know, if it's in a work set, a phase or whatever, that's some of the key ways people can hide things from themselves. And that maybe only happens with us, but maybe people know that there's 60 something ways to hide things in Revit.
I think my list is up into the 70s now. I took the original 30 list and then went through another and combined another, and I think I'm at 70, and that's including the normal ways. That's not including like, oh, I put a masking region over it and then I hid the object behind it and then I hid the work set it was on, and then
more creative. But they're the ones that bite the cats in the sandbox too. All right, so
let's see. We've talked about. I'm not going through our list because we've bounced all over here.
Well, that's what we've done every time we've gone through this. But why don't I just go back? Well, okay.
I was gonna say one more thing on working schedule versus print schedules. Usually, all of the data is there. Just a lot of it's hidden in the print schedule.
Right.
And the reason for a working schedule is so that the data you need is accessible to figure out why the print schedule doesn't look right. And rather than have to turn it off and on and have someone try and figure out exactly which parameter might be wonky, having a working schedule, just like, I'm going to jump in and take a look. You can see it.
Yes. And the work schedule is where you should go to edit anything. If you want to edit a parameter or something, maybe add that, the filtered waste number and stuff. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, the indirect waste number. This is where you should go and you should edit it. This is where you should go. It's working because this is where you can work in it. The print one is, that's not your sandbox. Go back over here, so to speak. So yeah, they're made for you to be able to work in them, to assist you in finding things. And yeah, they're going to have more information than you do in the print most times. All right, I'm coming up on 10 minutes left.
Yeah, so we've talked about conditional formatting, using that to drive colors and style formatting in the schedule proper. We've talked about using conditional formatting in a cleanup parameter. We've talked about where we want to use project parameters versus shared parameters. Generally, if it's going to involve a linked file, it's a shared parameter. If it's going to be something internal to your project, it's a project parameter. That doesn't mean it can't happen across projects in your firm, but if it's in your project. Let's see.
I just brought my notes over here on the screen.
Yeah,
I'm still sharing. Oh, did you want to see my notes?
No, I've been highlighting my notes, and I highlighted them all for
Okay.
the things we've done in a color I couldn't read through, so it makes it harder to
Okay.
see here. Um,
I was like, these are the ones that we want to go back through.
Emily, do we have any questions?
Yeah, there's one following question. I just wanted to make sure that you covered everything that you wanted to cover. And also, I really wanted to say that I think it's very valuable to use the conditional formatting for a QA/QC. That's something
Yes.
that not only applies to schedules, something at my previous firm, we would even use the conditional formatting and the coloring to check planned use as well. I know that's not related to schedules, but really leveraging the conditional formatting to check to see if fire rated doors are in fire rated walls if they were highlighted a certain color,
Right.
like you used to do with a highlighter. You used to do that
Mhm.
by hand and check it by hand. So there's a lot that you can do, and I learned something today as well. I really like what you're doing with the scheduling. And then the one question that was in the Q&A, there's a couple of them. Could you please talk more about sheet revision schedules? Is it something you can turn on and off from the schedule, or is it through adding clouds to each sheet?
So that, yes, that is currently a dummy parameter. This DI issued thing is something that needs to get checked per sheet, and then it will turn on that dot. What we are in the process of implementing, and that involved some. We're consolidating our model practice across the firm. We've had a couple of different templates that were getting more and more divergent and had some data sharing problems internally. And in cleaning that up, we realized that this was not happening consistently. So what we're looking at doing is taking this data, exporting it out of Revit into Excel, into a stock template that will effectively just look at the scheduled real Revit. If a revision is on a sheet, turn this box on, import that back into another working effectively another version of this schedule, which will set all of those checkboxes automatically based on if the revision or revision, if the cloud was set on, or if the revision was ticked on the sheet, so that those will happen automatically. That works in our not yet released version of our template, but we haven't pushed that out to the office yet.
Are you using a spreadsheet link to do that?
I'm maybe.
Okay.
We're looking at DI routes because I think it's a little bit cleaner at this point. I really like all of the Excel import export things for different reasons. There's one particular piece of data that the Ideate it's not sticky. I forget what their version's called. There's one particular piece of data that theirs exports that the CTC schedule one does not.
Okay.
The CTC one has some more powerful tools that are really useful, but a little bit less generally user-friendly interface. The DI Roots one seems to be sort of a middle ground, and for the data we're looking at doing aggressive stuff with, and for the free price point, it's pretty killer. But we definitely have and use the CTC tools for other things.
Okay, perfect. Especially I was thinking the parameter jammer earlier when Donnie was talking about pushing parameters in and out of families as well.
Oh,
There was
Parameter Jammer and Family Processor are absolutely killer tools.
Yeah, but you have to have it. That's a paid version, and some of our people
Right.
don't have the paid version. So I wrote a Dynamo for them.
perfect. Excellent.
And
See, there's a lot of solutions for
Yeah.
all of the issues. And I think that's what's really great. And I think that's what is good to hear what other people are doing, because
Okay.
especially for the new people that were on the call, you don't know what you don't know. A lot of people might not have known that this was possible. So I appreciate you both sharing your knowledge. And a couple, let's see, and I'm afraid this might have applied in the question and answer to something that was going on at the screen at the time. Jonathan asked example like forcing uppercase on a schedule. I'm not
yes, you can. It's called the cap locks. That's it.
The way the way I can see the two ways I can see quickly forcing uppercase in a schedule would be using either Dynamo to process the schedule and to edit the data, and to force. I believe there's a case editing thing for list processing in Dynamo, but there you could also do it in by exporting to Excel and then re-importing the data. And you could potentially do that using either using one of the active links where you're editing the Revit data and putting it back, or you could export it out and redo it. You could very awkwardly, with a whole lot of really nested logic, rewrite the data in a placeholder parameter, but that's going to get really messy, and that is probably going to run into the logic limits of how far Revit can go before it crashes Windows.
We have a lot of problems with families that are brought in from outside doing chemical case or no case at all, random case. Yeah, I try to clean all those up before I put a family up in our library, but I understand that that's a problem. And you know, if we don't have it, they're going to go get it somewhere. It's like I said about the XYZ parameters. If you give them the tools, but if I don't have the tools, they're going to go get them. They're going to go make the tools. And yeah, I understand the problem there. And someone asked something about BIMlink. We're talking strictly just inside of Revit today. And we're not talking about the external tools. I mean, we've mentioned a few of them that CTC has and stuff, and there's some great tools out there. But the things we were doing was just trying to be inside of Revit.
Yeah.
And we took up an hour doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for an hour just on CTC and ATG have great demos of the various their various tools. 88 does too. I just watched a great session on DI Roots. There's a bunch of folks who are talking for hours about Dynamo. That's its own semester long course.
Yeah.
But the core tools, a lot of them are there in Revit, and there's a lot of stuff you can really do. And if you don't have to step out into other things, if you don't have to train your users to do, if most users don't want to learn Dynamo, even Dynamo Player, which is pretty straightforward, is more than a lot of users are really happy to do. So if you can give them a really, really straightforward, accessible means to edit what they're looking for, they'll do that. If you can do that so that it stays within your ideal, I don't want to say standards, because the standards and best practices are all well and good until someone actually opens a project.
That's good. I like that.
That is a good one.
If you can leave them ways to follow those by accident, they're much more likely to do so.
Yeah.
All right. So that's coming up on the hour, and I think that's kind of a good ending note. And if either of you have any final thoughts, I just wanted to say personally, thank you for your time today, and thank you everyone who was on the call. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you. It's a bunch of fun.
It
All
has
right.
been.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
All
you a
right.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.